The uniforms that so many men Mitt Romney's age were wearing at that time. We showed photographs at the beginning of this segment of John Kerry in his military uniform at the time, of Bob Kerry in his military uniform, John McCain, all who went on to be members of the United States Senate. What do you make of Mitt Romney's avoidance at that time of doing his military duty, especially as someone who was publicly in favor of both the draft and the Vietnam War?
Well, I think it's simple. I mean, obviously, the Associated Press has been digging in on this, and the article's been floating around a lot of publications, but it's real simple. I mean, Mitt Romney didn't go to Vietnam because Mitt Romney didn't want to go. And yes, he did go to Europe. He served his church there on a mission. I personally have no problem with that. I mean, a tremendous amount of people of his faith have served our country honorably. But he did get a deferment in 1965, where he at that point was for the war and against the protesters. And then later on, he came home and he got another deferment. And he basically waited this thing out over a 5-year period until the draft essentially changed in 1969. His lottery number came up basically at like a number 300. So, you know, it's a question of entitlement. And this is sort of the core issue that affects him. He didn't serve because he didn't really want to. And, you know, at the time, he was for the war. In 1994, when he ran for the United States Senate, he was then against the war. And then now in 2007, he again wished he had served in Vietnam, but solely he didn't go to Vietnam just because he felt he was entitled and didn't need to. In my generation, the people who I served with in Iraq, I mean, we're the volunteer force. So plenty of us don't agree with the way the president's handling Afghanistan right now. Plenty of us didn't agree with the Iraq war, and we still went. So boo-woo-hoo to Mitt Romney. I mean, the bottom line was he didn't want to go. He was afraid, and that's okay if you're against the war. I mean, I think the problem for Mitt Romney is the fact that he was for the war. It's one thing to be against it and say, I don't want to go. It's a different thing to say you're for it when you want to extend U.S. forces in Afghanistan, when you didn't want to get out of Iraq, and when you essentially want to start another war in Syria. That's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, listen, I think it's all about honesty. I think it's all about, if you're afraid to go to war, say you're afraid to go to war. I can tell you, John, right now, I'm afraid to go to war. I would have been afraid to go to any war at any time during my lifetime. And you can also be principally opposed to it. Just tell the truth about your relationship to the war of your era, and Romney has not done that. Joe Conason and John Soltz, thank you both very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.